cyclone-ravaged Mozambique struggles to halt an outbreak of cholera. The number of confirmed cases of the disease now tops 130. Investigators looking into the March 10th crash of Ethiopian Airlines believe the anti-stall system was activated before the plane went down. We'll have details. And in our Music Makers segment, the sounds of Kenyan artist Kwame Rigi. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Gidhu. Benson Makori has the day off. This is Africa 54. There's more bad news for residents in Mozambique on Friday. Officials in the cyclone-stricken country said the number of cholera cases has jumped from 5 on Wednesday to at least 138 by late Thursday. Cholera is a bacterial disease spread by contaminated food or drinking water, and it causes severe diarrhea and dehydration. It can even kill within hours if it's not treated. Patients are pouring into a clinic in the wrecked port city of Beira as the government struggles to cope with the disease. We begin our cyclone coverage with Lauren Anthony.
For almost 2 weeks, those affected by deadly Cyclone Idai have been without food and shelter. But now they face another adversary, cholera, a waterborne disease that spreads rapidly and can kill within hours if left untreated. Mozambique's government has now confirmed the first cases in the wake of the disaster. Fragile patients pour into clinics in the wrecked port city of Beira, too weak to walk, seeking urgent rehydration. Many are children. Thousands were trapped for more than a week in submerged villages after catastrophic flooding, with no access to clean water, a problem rescue efforts are now targeting to prevent the spread of infection. Cyclone Idai killed at least 700 people across southern Africa, and hundreds of thousands are still displaced. Mozambique has been hit hardest. The World Health Organization is sending 900,000 doses of oral cholera vaccine to affected areas, but that will take days to arrive. Aid is slowly getting to those in need, though. The United Nations Refugee Agency said 3 planes will bring relief to 30,000 of those affected by the disaster as the water recedes. They're asking for $282 million to support the first few months of the rescue effort in Mozambique. Only 2% of that has been funded so far. Authorities implemented early warning systems ahead of the cyclone, but that news didn't reach everyone. Even if it had, there was little shelter to seek refuge from the floodwater in more remote areas of the country.
That was Reuters reporter Lauren Anthony. Now, Zimbabwe has additional help in their search for those who are missing and presumed dead from Cyclone Idai. South Africa police sniffer dogs have been sent to parts of the country in an effort to assist survivors of the powerful storm find the bodies of their loved ones and give them a proper burial. Columbus Mavunga reports from Chimanimani, about 500 kilometers southeast of Harare.
South African police search dogs look for Cyclone Idai survivors in Zimbabwe, welcome help for the families of those believed to be trapped under mud and boulders in Chimanimani district. This 35-year-old man is still looking for his 2 daughters, one who is 11 and the other one 15. They slipped off from their mother's hands as rains swept away their home March 16, the day Cyclone Idai hit. The father says the Zimbabwean government has done nothing to help and is hoping the South African team will help him get answers.
Yes, I lost, but it is painful to lose what you had without knowing what actually happened. My wish is to see my daughters and bury them properly. All other losses, cars, house, etc., I can replace them. I want to see and bury my daughters as others did to their relatives.
Ngangu is one of the areas worst hit by Cyclone Idai in Chimanimani district. It is now engulfed by a powerful smell which residents say could be from decomposing human bodies. More than 325 people from Chimanimani district are still missing after the cyclone. The South African sniffer dogs will be in Chimanimani for 5 days, searching a radius of 60 to 80 kilometers. But Ian Hoy of Wilderness Search and Rescue says they will not be able to search everything.
The devastation here, to be honest, is very bad. I think even if we were here for 3, 4, 5 weeks, it wouldn't be enough. But we're here for now, we're doing what we can, and we're going to accomplish what we can in the time that we've got available to us.
Zimbabwe security forces are coordinating with the South African team.
We have identified quite a number of places, and in the end, we'll excavate those places to try and retrieve the bodies. We will dig up and find out whether we can retrieve some bodies underneath.
Desperate Zimbabweans with no protective clothing are using shovels, picks and forks to search for bodies. When they strike a boulder, they can dig no further. It's unclear if the Zimbabwean government will provide resources to take the search further, with so many still unaccounted for. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Chimanimani, Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe's Agriculture Secretary says the country has up to a 7-month supply of maize after drought ravaged the nation's crops, and it needs to start importing grain now to avert further shortages. Ringson Chisiko said Friday the release of an official crop assessment report for 2019 had been delayed following Cyclone Idai, but authorities were aware of the damage caused by the drought. Besides the El Niño-induced drought, Cyclone Idai has devastated the eastern parts of the nation, sweeping away what remained of the crop in the area. The country's annual maize consumption is 1.2 million tons, and the country has 500,000 tons in strategic reserves. The Southern African nation is also struggling to import wheat due to severe shortages of US dollars. Last year, Zimbabwe harvested 160,000 tons of wheat compared to its annual consumption of 400,000 tons. Malawi is struggling to get relief aid to victims of flooding from Cyclone Idai, which killed at least 60 people and displaced hundreds of thousands. While the heaviest hit southern areas are largely cut off, one Malawian activist is on a personal mission to help those affected. Lamek Masina reports from Chikwawa, Malawi.
Businesswoman Abida Mia has so far organized about $20,000 worth of food, blankets and clothes for Malawian victims of Cyclone Idai. Her charity work began in early March after seeing the destruction caused by cyclone flooding firsthand.
It happened so suddenly, and I obviously had, money that I was budgeting for other, things to do. So I took all that cash aside and said, let's buy maize and go out into the field and assist the people, because there was such a huge need and people were starving and didn't have anything to eat.
People noticed Mia's effort to help and began bringing their donations to her home in Blantyre.
And I was really shocked. People were actually walking from their homes, maybe 15 to 20 kilometers away, with some clothes that they wanted to give. And they were bringing their fairly new clothes.
Mia estimates her charity group, Reach Out and Touch, has helped over 1,000 flood survivors. The group brings the aid to hard-to-reach areas like East Bank, where roads and bridges suffered severe damage. Despite their effort, flood-affected Malawians say there are still many people in need.
Although we are given such food, this is still not enough for us. As of now, our homes are empty. We lost almost everything. We are appealing to the government to provide us with seeds so that we can replant soon after the water subsides.
Malawi's Department of Disaster Management and Preparedness says Cyclone Idai affected nearly 1 million people. Officials say $30 million is needed for flood-displaced villagers living in 187 evacuation camps.
We were only given 4 tents for people to sleep in. This shows how many people have no proper place to sleep. It becomes worse whenever it starts raining. Some find refuge in classrooms at schools, while others squeeze themselves in at the health center.
Mia says in the long term, villagers needed to be moved to higher ground to avoid flooding. In the meantime, And while they wait for more support, Mia says her charity will continue to do what it can to help Malawi's victims of Cyclone Idai. Lamek Masina for VOA News, Chikwawa, Malawi.
New details have emerged in the investigation of that Boeing 737 MAX passenger jet crash in Ethiopia, according to a report in Friday's Wall Street Journal, citing people briefed on the matter. Here's Michelle Hennessy with the latest.
Investigators looking into the Boeing 737 MAX crash in Ethiopia have reached a preliminary conclusion, and it shows an anti-stall system was activated before the plane plunged and killed all 157 people on board. That's according to a report in the Wall Street Journal on Friday that cited people briefed on the investigation. 4 Reuters sources said on Thursday the U.S. safety investigators have also reviewed data from the plane's black boxes. The U.S. officials said a preliminary report is expected within days. The plane crashed on March 10th, shortly after takeoff, and the anti-stall system, called the MCAS, is at the center of safety concerns. Boeing's fastest-selling jet has orders worth more than $500 billion at list prices, but it's currently grounded globally by the FAA. An investigation into a separate 737 MAX crash in Indonesia last year has focused on the same system. Boeing has announced a planned software fix that would prevent repeated operation of the anti-stall system. And the company says they've developed a training package that pilots would be required to take before the worldwide ban can be lifted. Pilot training provided by Boeing and airlines has come under scrutiny as investigators worldwide try to determine the exact causes of the 2 crashes that happened within 5 months of each other.
Reuters reporter Michelle Hennessy with that report. Authorities in Comoros off Africa's eastern coast are on alert Friday, one day after 4 people were killed in a gunfight in a military camp where the police had detained an opposition presidential candidate. VOA's Swahili service reports that at least 7 people were wounded. A government official suggests the violence is not related to the arrest of Soilihi Mohammed, one of the 12 politicians who ran against President Azali Assoumani in Sunday's election. Police have also taken into custody more than a dozen women who were protesting against Azali's government. Opposition leaders say they do not recognize the election results because of what they call widespread fraud. Observers from 3 regional bodies, the African Union, the Common Market of Eastern and Southern Africa, and the African Standby Forces of the East, say the election lacks credibility. Now to North Africa, where hundreds of thousands of protesters marched through the streets of Algiers for the 6th day Friday in a row to demand the removal of President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Friday's demonstrations come just days after the country's powerful military called for him to step down. Dancing, blowing horns and shouting freedom slogans, some protesters also called for the entire political elite to go, saying that while they were against Bouteflika, they are also rejecting the army's intervention in civilian political life. Meanwhile, the Army Chief of Staff has asked the Constitutional Council to rule whether the ailing 82-year-old president is fit for office. Key allies have deserted the head of state, who has rarely been seen in public since suffering a stroke in 2013 and now faces the biggest crisis of his 20-year-old rule. Under the Constitution, the chairman of Parliament's upper house, Abdelkader Ben Salah, would serve as caretaker of president for at least 45 days after Bouteflika's departure. But even if Bouteflika quits, there is no clear long-term successor. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Still ahead on Africa 54, Kenyan artist Kwame Regei. But first, a look at Friday's headlines.
Queremos, neste momento, deixar uma palavra de apreço e agradecimento.
Au niveau des accompagnantes, avant de donc au boulanger, et quand on y voit rosa, mais des macans.
Our local partner help us to better understand.
South Korea announced on Friday President Moon Jae-in will travel to the United States next month for a summit with President Donald Trump on the stalemate with North Korean nuclear diplomacy. It would be their first meeting since Trump's second summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Vietnam last month collapsed due to disputes on U.S.-led sanctions on the North. North Korea recently threatened to quit the nuclear diplomacy. Moon favors greater ties with North Korea and a negotiated solution to the nuclear crisis shuttled between Washington and Pyongyang to facilitate the nuclear diplomacy. Moon's office says he will visit the United States April 10th and 11th. U.S. President Donald Trump is celebrating the findings of the Mueller report on Russia investigation. Robert Mueller cleared the president and his 2016 campaign of conspiring with Russia, but he did not make a judgment on whether the president sought to obstruct justice. That decision was made by Attorney General William Barr, who says there's not enough evidence to warrant further action. The political fallout from the Mueller report could reach well into the 2020 presidential campaign. Here's VOA national correspondent Jim Malone.
At the U.S. Capitol, a triumphant President Donald Trump meets with Senate Republicans.
It was proven very strongly, no collusion, no obstruction, no nothing. We are doing so well. We've never probably had a time of prosperity like this. It's been great.
Trump's Republican allies believe he can reset his political agenda, including Senator Lindsey Graham.
You're probably stronger today than you've been any time in your presidency. This cloud has been removed. The question for you is, how do you use it? What are you going to do?
Democrats are demanding the release of the full Mueller report, including Senator Chuck Schumer.
And our main thrust on this issue is simply transparency. Release the report, then come to conclusions.
For now, the Mueller report finding of no collusion with Russia is a political boost for the president, says Bill Sweeney.
For President Trump, the preliminary reports on the Mueller report are all very, very positive. But the question remains what's in the Mueller report and how will the administration release that information to the Congress and the American people.
But Sweeney predicts it will have a limited impact on the upcoming presidential election.
I think President Trump's base stays with President Trump. I think those opposed to President Trump remain opposed to President Trump. So far, the Mueller report has done nothing to change the hearts or minds or soul of any undecided voter going into this election.
New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is the latest Democrat to officially join a crowded field of presidential contenders.
And that is why I am running for president of the United States.
Analyst Matt Dallek says there's a reason why so many Democrats are lining up to take a shot at the White House in 2020.
You wouldn't see this many candidates running if they didn't think that they had a real shot at unseating an incumbent for the first time since Bill Clinton did it in 1992 to George H.W. Bush.
Trump may have strengthened his base following the Mueller report and made impeachment a more remote option for congressional Democrats. For their part, Democrats are more likely now to focus their efforts on beating Trump at the polls next year, says analyst Larry Sabato.
Democrats have to find a way to break up that electoral college majority that Trump got. There are ways to do it. There are reasonable ways to do it, but it isn't even close to being assured.
Trump is hoping to follow in the footsteps of other recent two-term presidents like Barack Obama and George W. Bush, and a avoid the fate of Bush's father, George H.W. Bush.
I just want to tell you that America is the greatest place on earth.
Jim Malone, VOA News, Washington.
This month marks 4 years since the Saudi-led coalition campaign in Yemen began to oust the Houthi rebels from parts of the country. The fighting has caused what the United Nations calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis, displacing people from their homes, creating food shortages, a growing civilian death toll, and undermining children's development. The UN estimates that about 10 children die every day in Yemen from preventable diseases caused by hunger. VOA's Ladza Hoke has our report.
Teenage boys hang around the cemetery in Yemen's capital Sana'a every afternoon in the hope of landing some paid work. Ahmed Al-Hamadi is only 13.
We usually wait for funeral processions to work. If no one has died, we just hang around the graves and play around here.
15-year-old Yasser Al-Arbahi attends school for about 3 hours in the morning and spends afternoons searching for jobs.
The morning after I wake up, I go to school at 8. I'm in the first grade of secondary school until 11:30. Then I go at my grandfather's house, sometimes to have lunch at his house, sometimes at my house. I stay up until the afternoon, then I go to the cemetery. If there's a grave that needs to be cleaned, I'll spray it down. I do the same thing every day through Thursdays. Then on Fridays, I sell water.
Ahmed and Yasser attend school at least for a few hours each morning. About 2 million Yemeni children have dropped out of school since 2015, according to the United Nations. About 2,500 boys, some of them as young as 10, have been recruited to fight. And in some areas, more than half of the girls are married before the age of 15. Last year's report by UNICEF said more than 2,500 schools were out of use, with 2/3 damaged by attacks, 27% closed, and 7% used for military purposes or as shelters for displaced people. Children's health is jeopardized by shortages of food and outbreaks of disease such as cholera.
We had her tested and they said she was affected by cholera. Now she is getting treatment. She is getting better.
Even in Sana'a, hospitals lack adequate supplies to treat patients. The situation is dire in some remote villages where children's lives are in danger from the effects of malnutrition.
If this girl returns home, the problem will inevitably increase, and she could suffer from increased tumors. She already has some tumors in her feet.
Rights group Save the Children estimates that 85,000 Yemeni children under the age of 5 may have died of starvation. About 80% of the Yemeni population, about 24 million, is in need of humanitarian assistance. 1 million people have been displaced by fighting. Zlarica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Small parking lift in northern Egypt could be a solution to the local parking problem. The Smart Park lift in Mansoura, some 120 kilometers north of Cairo, only takes up space for 2 cars, but its vertical parking mechanism allows it to stack up to 12. The system multiplies the number of cars that can fit into a single space, easing a parking crisis in a country that sees a 10% annual increase in the number of cars on the streets. Egyptians regularly struggle to find parking spots in a country of nearly 100 million people. The country is already home to nearly 10 million vehicles. Next up, at the Pets Beauty Center in Tunisian capital Tunis, sat a cream-colored Pomeranian on top of a counter waiting to be pampered and groomed. The Pet Beauty Salon offers a variety of services to improve the health and well-being of domestic animals. Owner Samal Matusi opened the beauty center 2 weeks ago and says it has since been highly welcomed by those who love and care about their animals. She first thought of the idea when she ran into a street corner selling pets' beauty products during a trip to a European country. Prices at the center range from $8 to $25, depending on the service. And finally, football fans recently gathered in Yei, South Sudan to watch a tournament aimed at promoting peace in the region. The competition was organized by the UN mission in South Sudan. The Yei Peace Tournament was the second of its kind held here. South Sudan, the world's youngest nation, has been racked by civil war since 2013, when President Salva Kiir's troops clashed with forces loyal to opposition leader Riek Machar, his former vice president. The civil war has crippled oil production, forced millions to flee, and killed some 400,000 people. And that's what's trending today. And it's Music Makers Friday, and today we feature Kwame Reggae, a young artist who is on a mission to revive the cultural pride of Kenya with his music genre that incorporates modern and traditional themes. Here is Kwame with Munoti. From all of us here in Washington,